but welcome. Thanks for coming. I would like to talk this morning about heroes, that we could be L&D heroes. 3 things I think will help us be heroes: change, embracing change, curation, and cognitive science. The 3 things I'd like to focus on. Now, first of all, with this idea of heroes, this man here, or reporter, Tintin as I used to know it when I was growing up. I know the word is different in your language, but for me, Tintin when I was growing up was really a big part of my childhood. He was a hero in every story. He saved the day, he fought the criminals. Even though he was unemployed and just a newspaper reporter, he was a hero. So I went on Sunday to the Shea Museum outside of Brussels, and it was like my mecca because I grew up loving this character. And you can see here that Tintin and his little dog Milou have found me in the jungle and are happy to see one of their fans. Now, the museum for me has a nice metaphor and a nice way to explain or actually demonstrate some of the points that I'm going to share with you today. So I'm going to kind of contrast and compare what's going on in the museum with what I think about learning and development. This museum for me was a learning experience, of course. I wanted to learn more about the artist that I really admired when I was younger. Now, Tintin and Captain Haddock and the other characters in the books always went through change. There was constant change. Every story was in a new country, new culture. There were new criminals to fight. There was always something changing in the stories. And I guarantee that those books are part of the reason why I love to travel and explore new cultures and drink different beer from other countries. So Heraclitus said that the only constant is change. Every minute, every hour, every day, every week, there is change. It never stops, and it keeps getting faster. If we think about just the last 2 years with technology, politics, social events, there's been a lot of change. As Craig and I were speaking about last night, because I was in Brussels on the weekend, there's some stuff going on over there with Brexit, etc., that we probably didn't expect 2 years ago. So change is happening all the time. And in this atmosphere of constant, accelerated change, I would like to ask you a question this morning. What percentage of organizations focus primarily on traditional learning methods in this scenario of constant change? Anybody have a guess with percentage?
80.
80%? 90%? 20%? Anyone else? Well, the statistic that I found from Burson is 74%. 74. I put that twice on my slide because I can't believe it. In the state that we have now with change happening so fast, so constant, every single day, why are 74% of organizations still doing traditional learning approaches? I would like you to be the hero that works in the 26%. So by being the hero, we are going to empower employees via modern methods and help them acquire skills to keep pace with change. Because don't forget, it's not just that the change is happening and we have to help people learn, but the learners have to be able to keep pace with that change. Their jobs are changing daily, the skills that they need keep changing, and I believe that's where L&D people, L&D professionals can become the heroes, by helping people keep pace with that change by gaining new skills all the time. So we've heard the word or the phrase LMS before. I like to say MLS, Modern Learning Systems. I think that today we need to look at different approaches and different technologies to help people. So I look at modern learning systems like Exonify, Degreed, Grovo, QStream, and let's not forget Curator. I think that these modern learning systems are really important to help us help people in these times of change. So let's meet the MLS. What's different about them? One of the things I think is, I'm over here. One of the things that I like about it is the spaced learning. That we space out the learning over time as opposed to giving someone a big brain dump that happens over the course of a day and then hope that they remember all that we teach them. The other thing I like about modern learning systems, data and analytics are part of the experience. We can measure if what we are doing is effective in helping learners, and then we can take that data to our leaders and say, look at what we're doing. Look at how we're helping these people. And we can show that we're more relevant. Microlearning. You might have heard this expression before, where we package learning into smaller pieces, smaller chunks for people. We don't have time, I don't believe, in this day and age to spend hours and hours at learning through LMSs and modules. People are so busy and they're used to running from one thing to the next. As I like to say, microlearning helps people learn between diapers and dinner. They are mobile-ready apps. How many of you use your phone more than you use a computer these days? Most of us. Our learners are the same. And if the learning is not on the phone, I think that they might not think it's as important or relevant to them. Personalization. How many of you use Airbnb? Uber? Netflix? Okay? All of these apps, all of these tools help us personalize the content, the experience to what we want it, when we want it, how we want it. Why would our learners be different? If we're personalizing everything in our lives, why is our learning also not personalized? And these modern learning systems help people personalize the experience to what they need, when they need it, and how they want it. The other thing I like to talk about is frictionless learning. The fact that the learning doesn't have barriers for people. It doesn't give them friction, that they can smoothly go through the learning process without having obstacles in their way, without tripping, without getting confused, making the learning as frictionless as possible. The pace of change is demanding that we give learners control over their experience. How many of you feel comfortable when you give learners complete control of the experience? Just a few people. It's difficult. It's difficult to just give people something and say, run with it. Do what you want with that. We like to be in control because we are the learning and development professionals. We are the HR professionals. We know what's best. But learners want to be in control. They're used to that. And if they're not in control and things are changing as fast as they are, then we're going to have some difficulties, I believe. Now, back to the museum that I went to on Sunday, the Shea Museum, which I absolutely loved. I went in, and the first thing they did was they gave me an iPod, put it around my neck, and through this iPod, I could just tap a few things, one button, two buttons, and I got to learn so many things about Shea. It was fantastic. It was frictionless. It was mobile. I carried it around with me. I was in control of the experience. It was fantastic. Little micro-learning bits that were narrated actually in a very humorous way to help me learn about one of my favorite artists. So the museum gets it. They understand what people need and how they operate in their normal lives, and they pulled that into their museum, and it was really fantastic. Highly recommend going there. Now let's talk about one of the modern learning systems that I mentioned, Exonify. Exonify is actually from the town where I live, the city, I should say, where I live. And I use Exonify in my job with the team that I work with. But the example that they have given that is a case study for a larger corporation than what I work at is Walmart. With 75,000 plus employees, Walmart wanted to create a culture of safety, a world-class safety culture. So Exonify was delivering to these employees everyday daily questions to lead to a change in behavior. You can do Exonify on your phone, on your computer, anywhere you want, anytime you want, and it takes about 4 or 5 minutes every day. Let's see, what were the results? The recordable incidents were down 54%, so it was a safer place to work. 96% positive behavior observations. Knowledge increased 15%, and the thing that I find most interesting is that voluntary participation was 91%. Now, there's a crucial word here, voluntary participation. These people were learning because they wanted to, and 91% of those 75,000 employees were doing that because they wanted to. I believe part of that reason is because it was convenient for them, it was easy, it was mobile, and it didn't take a lot of time in their workday. Another company I mentioned is QStream. QStream worked with Illy, the coffee company, and they delivered via mobile as well. As again, I said, if it's not mobile, I don't think people are going to care so much. So they delivered on mobile. They delivered to a North American sales team, the quality assurance, technical, and admin staff. And a similar scenario to the Walmart one, they gave question and answer based scenarios. So they took the knowledge and they put it in a scenario. What would you actually do on your job every day? And it only took a few minutes to complete. Again, the microlearning idea. Now, what happened here? What were the results of QStream and Illy? They increased product knowledge 15%. The staff embraced the convenience, which is not a surprise to me. When it's convenient, why would you not embrace it? The analytics and insights were used by managers to be able to reinforce key product knowledge in strategic markets. So if they were in a certain city or country where they knew that people in their stores needed to learn something specific for that market, they could deliver it easily through the app. And then the voluntary participation was 100%. How many of you get 100% participation with your LMS learning experiences? Interesting. I think this is an amazing statistic, 100% participation. At my job, I'm using Exonify, as I mentioned. I launched it 3 weeks ago. This is the 3rd week. And in the 2nd week, I had 81% participation with excuse me, with my colleagues, which I thought was fantastic. That people were willing to learn with this app whenever they wanted, during the day. Some people learn on the bus on their way to work. And I was telling Craig last night that when we were at dinner that I had some people writing me on a Sunday morning 2 weeks ago to complain about one of the questions. And I thought, why are you bothering me on a Sunday morning? But then I realized, wait a second. People are doing learning for work on Sunday morning at home on their own time. Amazing. And I was super happy about that. And I think it's because the modern learning systems make it so convenient and easy for people. It's frictionless, and they enjoy it, so they do it on their own time, not just at work. What does that mean for us? So for L&D people, we need new skills and capabilities. As L&D professionals, I think if we're going to look at new modern learning systems, new approaches, we need to get some new skills too. We need to be more familiar with technology as well. I think one of the difficulties that some of these companies have in just selling their products is that they have to convince us of a new way of looking at learning first and then convince us of the usefulness of their product. So some of the things that I see people talking about now in our space that you might have seen also in LinkedIn or Twitter is design thinking, learning experience design, data-based decisions, so making decisions based on data instead of just guessing or assuming what our learners want. New technology, like the ones that I've explained. A flow-based learning experience. What I mean by that is during the workday, through someone's routine, the learning just flows, just is involved and is part of the experience, as opposed to saying, Friday morning, I'm going to have all of you guys in a workshop, and you're going to learn for 3 hours. I think the flow-based approach fits in people's days a little bit better. And the last thing I think that we need to consider is curation these days. So let's look at curation. I always say, stop reinventing the wheel. This thing that drives me crazy about learning and development in HR is that we keep thinking we need to reinvent the wheel. There's so much out there already that I believe curation is where we should focus our time these days. Why do employees find it so difficult to learn? Any suggestions? Why do you think people find it so difficult to learn? Yes. Us. Okay. we make it more difficult for them. Okay. Yeah. So if everyone maybe didn't hear him, he was saying that the world that we live in, the business world, creates barriers and makes it difficult, so we make it difficult for people. Anyone else have an idea of why employees find it so difficult to learn? Anyone else? Yep. Difficult to find the right information the moment that they need it, yes?
Just because it's compulsory.
Just because it's compulsory, because I have to do it, right. I saw a hand here, yeah?
They want to get work done,
They want to get work done. That's something I hear at work all the time. People say, I'm too busy to do this learning. Or I create a learning event for them and they don't show up because all of a sudden they've got a sales call that they've got to make. One of the other reasons I believe it's so difficult is that there's too much information. There's too much content and they cannot find what's valuable. I like this term that you see here, infobesity. I believe infobesity is a problem right now. Think about how much information you've already seen today before you arrived at this event, and how much you see on a daily basis on your phone, on your tablet, on your computer, on the street, through phone calls, through text messages. We get so much information, and people don't know what to do with it, and like he said, where to find what's relevant for them. So I would like you to consider being the hero in this space by providing a smooth learning experience for people that's frictionless and helping them find what's relevant. I think this is where learning and development and HR professionals can set ourselves apart and make ourselves the heroes by helping people kind of wade through all of this content and figure out what is good for them, what is relevant for them, and giving it to them in a way that fits their routine and their needs in these times of crazy change. Now, Google. How many of you go to Google first when you want to learn something? A lot of us. Why? Why do you go to Google first? Habit? Why did it become a habit? How did it become a habit for you? Very easy? Mobile? Quick? How many taps or clicks does it take you to find something? You can see when Google sometimes will tell you you found your answer in less than 50 seconds. So I believe that Google has become our greatest threat. We go into the organization and we tell people, we're going to help you learn. And in the back of their minds, they're thinking, I can just Google this. I don't need your help. So we have this competition now, I believe, called Google, and we need to prove to people that we can also help them and provide for them things that are relevant and helpful. YouTube. How many of you go to YouTube when you want to learn something? Again, mobile, easy. Most of the videos are under 10 minutes. They're quick. 67% of millennials agree that they can find on YouTube anything they want to learn. I have a friend who has a smart car. Smart cars are not very common in North America like they are here. People love big, big trucks where I live. But my friend has a smart car. And sometimes something goes wrong with the smart car. Things always go wrong with cars. He has used YouTube, I believe, 4 times now in the last 2 years. He has his phone beside him while he's got at the car, and he's learning how to fix things in his car by himself through YouTube videos and saving money instead of going to a mechanic. You can learn anything you want on YouTube. And the videos only last about 4 minutes. Now here I am with some of my coworkers. I work at a company named Sortable. It is the fastest growing tech company in my region. We are hiring about two people every week. We are currently at about 78 people. We'll probably be about 130 by the end of the year. Here are a few of my coworkers. This was the day that our internet didn't work, so we all went to a coffee shop. Because when you work at a tech company and the internet doesn't work, you can't do any work. That's the modern reality we have. But with my coworkers, I've decided to try as much as I can to use curation to help them learn. Our business model, our tech is in the ad tech space. So when we were at dinner last night and I told people that our company works with those advertisements on the internet sites that you hate to see, that's what my company does. We are helping people make more money from the advertisements that they have on their websites. So the technology is a little very complicated. The industry is super complicated and changes every single day. We have learning happening like every half hour in my company. It's quite incredible at the speed and the amount of learning that happens. So one thing I like to do is have UGC videos, or user-generated content. I'm not a video expert. I used to do some video. I've edited it before in the past, but I'm not an expert in video. But I have a coworker who has a YouTube channel. He's really good at video. He knows how to edit. He knows how to narrate. So anytime we need a new piece of learning that is related to our technology, he makes it for me. and then I put it in Exonify so people can grab it with tags and titles that will help them find it quicker. I'm not going to build that because I'm not a video expert. The other thing I try to do is find blog posts and articles that are out there in the wild, and I bring them into Exonify so that people can have a curated list of articles that will help them learn about our industry and our technology. I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. I don't know enough about ad tech. I don't know enough about technology that we are working with to create this stuff by myself, and someone else has already done it. So I just find it, and I put it in a place where people can find it easily, and it's organized in a good way for them. The other thing that we use Slack at work. And in our Slack channel, in our Slack team, we have a channel called Industry News. And every day, all day, throughout the day, people are putting articles there they find that are relevant to us for our competitors, to like Google and what they're doing in ad tech, etc. And people will put it there, and it's a very good, up-to-date resource for people to always see what's going on in our industry. The other thing we use on Slack has bots. So there's Slack bots on Slack that you can set up to automate processes for you. So I had one of my coworkers who's better at technology than I am. He created a Slack bot around this hashtag TIL, which means Today I Learned. It's common on Reddit, if you see that on Reddit. And so what often happens on Slack is one of my coworkers will ask a question. How do I do this with a publisher? And someone will go in and answer that question for them. And then what happens is, if hopefully they remember or I see it, we put this hashtag TIL after that conversation, and the bot automatically gives me a notification. It says, "Attention Jamie Good, learning has happened." And then I can grab that, put it in Exonify with proper tags, proper titles, so that people can find it 2 weeks down the road, 4 weeks down the road. It's easy to search in Slack, but it's not easy to remember all of these conversations. So I pull them out, and I put them in a place that's easier for people to grab. So this is a nice automated way that I get user-generated content that helps other people in the organization learn. Because the other problem sometimes with a conversation on Slack is not everybody sees it. So some people don't know that it happens, so I pull it out, and I put it somewhere where people can access it easily. What I'm always trying to do is make learning available in 3 clicks or less. I believe that we are getting so used to just tapping 1 or 2 times to get what we want on our phones. For example, with Uber, you can get a taxi coming to you in like 2 clicks. So why should our learning be any different? I try as much as I can to take away those barriers, take away that friction, and do 3 clicks or less. It doesn't sound like much to do 4 clicks, but if you're doing it 100 times a day, it really starts to add up. And people that I work with, they won't go past 3 or 4 clicks into something. I work mostly with millennials, and they want it immediately. I believe this approach helps me get up-to-date, time-saving information for my coworkers that gives them performance support. If we focus on performance support and helping people on their everyday situations, I think we're doing them a great service. Now, user-generated content. Why do I think this is so important? Because adult learners already know shit. We are already smart people. We are already educated people. Our learners are the same. They did not come into the workplace without any knowledge. They already know stuff. So why don't we take advantage of that and have them help us help them? The other reason I think this is important is that they are in the trenches every day. You're not. We have a big sales team in my company. Half our company is sales. I'm not a sales expert. I don't do sales. I'm not on the phone every day talking to publishers about their problems, their needs, and their wants. But my sales team is. So they're in the trenches doing it. They know better about their situation and what they need than I do. So I listen to them, and then I help them find the things that they need. They create, you guide, and gather. This is what I'm trying to do at my job, is have people create the tools that we need, the sources that we need for them, as opposed to thinking that I need to do it myself. It would actually be impossible for me to do that. So I let my coworkers help me create the stuff that they need, and then I guide them in making it, and I gather it and put it in a place that is accessible and hopefully 3 clicks or less. What I'm also trying to do at work is learning roadmaps for the roles that are in the company, for sales, for a developer, for an ops person. I try to create learning roadmaps for them because people want to know, and they ask me, Jamie, where do I go next? What should I learn? Where do I need to be the best employee that I can be? So I show learners where they need to be, and then I give them the resources for each stop. So I say, here's stop number 1, here's stop number 2, here's stop number 3, and at each stop, I give them a list of resources that they need to understand and learn from that stop before they can move on to the next one. And at these stops, they are checking in with their manager to make sure that their comprehension is there, that they understand, and that they can move on to the next stop in the learning roadmap so they know where they need to be. And I'm always changing or adding to these as we go because the industry that we work in is like that. It's always changing as well. And then they are responsible for getting to the end point. If I show you a map, you are responsible for getting to point A to point B. I'm not. And I think this is important to give people the responsibility to get where they want to be in the time that they want to get there. So let's go back to the Shea Museum. This is a wonderful example of drawings that Shea did before the books were published. It's brilliant craftsmanship, actually. I think it's amazing, actually, too, to see the iterations that were happening in the background here. Now, speaking of curation, did I go to the Shea Museum and see new things that the museum created? No, I did not. The museum curated all these pictures, newspaper articles, video, personal possessions of Shea, drawings that they made, and they put them in a nice kind of learning roadmap for me to go throughout the museum to learn about this fantastic artist. Are they going to reinvent the wheel and create new stuff? Of course they're not. They don't need to. So they did a brilliant job of having a way for me to kind of flow through the museum with curated, fantastic pieces that helped me learn more about Tintin, the characters, and the artist who created them. I actually learned a lot more about Belgium that day, too. So my warning to you is, if you create one more leadership course, a gang of bikers will come and kick your ass. It's not true, but I'm making this joke just to point out that we don't need more leadership courses. There's so much out there already. Why don't you find stuff that you can curate and then help people learn about leadership? The third C that I talked about earlier was cognitive science. Again, work with the brain, not against it. Our brains work a certain way, and if we're fighting against it, we're preventing people from learning. How much new information do we forget in just 24 hours after learning it? Any guesses? What's the percentage? 75, 80, 81? Well, that's very precise, 81. Any others? Within 24 hours, we forget 70% of new information. Within a week, forgetting claims 90% of that new information. So think about that. If you're giving people something to learn and they're going to forget that much in a day, then we need to think about how we do learning a little bit differently. So here we can be the hero again by helping people remember what they learn so that they can then transfer that learning to their jobs. Imagine if you help people learn something, then they forget it. How can they use that information in their jobs properly? It's impossible if they've forgotten it. So we need to help them remember it so they can transfer it back to the workplace. Again, we'll go back to the Shea Museum. I was really surprised. Someone in that museum must be an instructional designer because it was brilliant what they did on the iPod. I learned about a certain period in Shea's life, and then it was followed by a short quiz or a game to help me remember what I had just learned in that room. And so I had instances of retrieval repeatedly throughout the museum to help me remember all that I was learning and piece it together in a complete narrative. There were also games. At the end of the museum, the last thing you get on your iPad is a game that is like, so you think you're a Tintin fan? Prove it. And it gives you these questions, and you tap the answers that you think are correct to see if you remembered what you learned in the 3 floors of the museum. I thought it was brilliant. Before I left the museum, I had review, basically, of the information and a retrieval opportunity to take that information out further. And there were reminders during the narration in certain rooms. The narrator would say, do you remember in that Tintin story when this character did this? Do you remember reading this? And I remembered, even though it's been since I was a child, I was able to retrieve that information, and it made the experience that much more enjoyable for me. Now here's a diagram that shows the forgetting curve. This is what happens in our brains when we learn new information. It's kind of sad to see, but true, that when we get the first bit of information, here's that forgetting that happens. When we get another reminder, though, things start to improve. We start to remember more. And I believe this is really important. This is one of the main reasons why I chose Exonify to use in my job with my coworkers, because it gives my colleagues instances of retrieval over periods of time so that the information they're learning stays top of mind and they don't forget it, so that they can use it when they need to in the workplace. The more that we do this kind of thing with the learning, the easier it is for people to retrieve it from long-term memory when they need it on the job at the time that they need it. Now, algorithms, I believe, do this better than I could ever do. The spaced learning that I just showed you, where there are reminders at intervals that fight against that forgetting curve for long-term retention, that's difficult for me to do manually. To think about, let's say, all of you people, I'm going to have about this many people in my company right now, and I have to try to help all of you retain different information at different times based on when you learn, based on when you answer questions. That's impossible for me to do that. So I believe that algorithms can do that for me. And so I chose a tool, a modern learning system, that can do this for me. It adapts the reminders based on the learner's engagement with the platform. So if I give you questions today and you get it wrong, you'll probably get that question again tomorrow or Friday. If you get that question wrong again on Friday, you'll get that question again next Monday or Tuesday until you get it right. When you get that question right, that question does not disappear. It comes back into your work routine, maybe 2 weeks later, maybe 1 month later, maybe 3 months later, but you will see that information again based on your interaction with the platform so that you will always remember the information I'm giving you. That for me was very important. I can't do that myself manually. I am not a spreadsheet genius at all. So a question I have for you, based on this kind of approach to learning, is how many full day, all day, multi-day learning events are you still doing? Because if we are doing constant brain dumps, where we just take everything that's in our brain and dump it onto people in a 3-hour morning workshop, it's going to be very difficult for them to remember that. So why don't we provide microlearning chunks for people and allow the learner to control the pace? Give them little bits of the information at a time, build the knowledge over time, give them instances of retrieval, and see what happens. Another reason I think we need to work with the brain is this reality called decision fatigue. How many of you find that at the end of a workday, you can't make any more decisions? Anybody have that happen to them? You're like, your brain is done. You're like, it's time to go home, get a nice Belgian beer, and forget. Well, then the problem is then you got to decide what beer you're going to have, but that's an easy decision. We can't make decision after decision without paying a biological price. We just cannot. So consider this. How many decisions does your learning experience include? How many decisions does someone have to make to get through the content that you've given them that is going to just create more cognitive load in their mind? Here's a story that I found in the New York Times that I think illustrates the problem with decision fatigue. This one dealt with Israeli prisoners. So in the morning, some Israeli prisoners would go in front of the parole board asking for parole. What percentage of prisoners do you think got parole in the morning? Any guesses? 50%, 60, 40, what do you think? 75? Close. 74% of prisoners in the morning got parole. How many in the afternoon? 15? Close. Less than 10%. Why? Because by the afternoon, the judges were done. Their brains were tired. They had too much decision fatigue. They could not make any more decisions. And so they just said, no, no, no. Get out of here. I need to go home and have a beer. The brain seeks shortcuts. Our brain is always looking for ways to save energy. And thus, Google and YouTube are so popular with us and our learners, not our LMS. Because we are always looking for shortcuts and ways to save energy. So that's why Google is the perfect tool for our brains. Again, with the Shea Museum, if I had to make lots of decisions when I was in that museum, it would have given me more cognitive load, and it would have made it more difficult for me to learn what I wanted to learn about one of my favorite artists. So instead, the museum had a brilliant approach. In the entrance to every room and the exit to every room was a little map, and it showed you where to go next, and it also had arrows to show you where you would use your audio guide. It showed you which display case and which display had the audio connected to it. So I never had to make any decision when I was there. I just walked through the museum, enjoyed everything, knew where I needed to go next, knew what button to push next to listen to the next narration, easy peasy. And it took off that decision-making cognitive load so that my experience in that museum was even that much better. Another thing to think about with the brain is to make it stick. You want the information to stick. You want people to hold on to that new information. So I never spoon feed, even though my coworkers are seriously really busy. I get people pissed off at me every day because they come to my desk, they go, Jamie, I need to learn this thing. I talked to a publisher today. They want to know this, da 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 da. And I go, okay, breathe, remember to breathe, and let's talk about this. And then I see how I can help them learn without spoon feeding it to them like you feed a baby. Because in that way, I don't believe it's the best way to learn for them. If I'm just spoon feeding them, there's no effort. There's no struggle with the learning. If there's good effort put towards the learning is deeper and more durable. It will last longer in our brains. Spoon feeding and effortless learning means that you have the information today, but it's gone tomorrow out of your brain. And so I'm always looking for ways to make my coworkers struggle with the learning. So I give them learning challenges. Every time there's something new that people need to learn, I think in my mind, okay, how could I challenge them with this so that they learn it on their own by doing something? Giving people a problem to solve before they get the solution is going to lead to better learning, especially when mistakes are involved. We say that we learn from mistakes, and we do. So I look at a new topic that I have to help people learn, and then I figure out a challenge. And I say to them, okay, you've got to do this, and by the end of doing this, you should learn this. And then once you've learned that, I want you to share that with your coworkers. And I believe that this helps the learning stick better in people's minds. So, because I'm talking about retrieval instances and helping people remember, I've put a slide here to help you remember the 3 C's that I've just spoken about. I first talked about change. I believe that we need to embrace change in numerous ways. Be the 26%, not the 74% doing traditional learning. Consider an MLS, a modern learning system, instead of an LMS. Allow learner control. Don't be afraid to give smart, mature adults control of their learning. They can do it. Gain new skills yourself. Always try to keep learning yourself. If you talk about learning but you're not learning constantly yourself, you're going to have trouble in these times of change, especially when Google is a major threat to our profession. And adopt new processes. Think about new ways of doing things, not the same old, same old. Another thing to embrace then I talked about is curation. Instead of reinventing the wheel, let's fight obesity. Let's not continue to fill people's brains with more and more information that they're already getting overwhelmed with. Let's look at ways that we can pull existing things into the learning experience. Providing frictionless learning experiences that don't have barriers, that don't have obstacles for people. Gather the relevant resources, figure out ways and tools to help you do that, and then give learning roadmaps to your team so that they know the path, they know the journey that they need to follow, and you give them resources at every stop along the way. And the other thing that I talked about was cognitive science, the third C. Provide reminders at spaced intervals so that people will have that information top of mind and they won't forget it. Space out the learning over time as opposed to just doing big brain dumps in a 3-hour morning workshop. Use microlearning whenever you can. People are busy and they're used to consuming information in small chunks, and that's the way they look at learning these days as well. Avoid decision fatigue. Don't give people too many decisions to make about the learning you're giving them. Make it easy for them. And then don't spoon feed. If you just spoon feed them like you do with a baby, they're not going to learn how to do it themselves. It's time, I believe, to stop taking orders as HR and learning and development professionals. It's time for us to lead the change, and I believe it's time for you and I to be the heroes. Thanks so much.